Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week ahead. This week, we are with the moon beginning in the sign of Taurus. We're just after the Pisces new moon that we had last week. And so we're in this kind of first light of the moon time. We're also just after Venus's stationing of her retrograde and Mercury's entrance into the sign of Aries, which is preparing Mercury for its retrograde. And while the moon is in Venus's sign, it's just recently made a square to Pluto and will continue until it gets to a conjunction with Uranus. And part of what this has brought up for me, there's been great instability in the world. I mean, maybe you're also experiencing this kind of uncertainty in your own life, but if we look at the larger, like cosmic reality, the world is an incredibly unstable and uncertain place. There is immense conflict. There is a lot of polarization. These things exist, and then in our own life, in our own mundane reality, we have all these different levels, or I would say layers of reality. So there can be the daily sort of mundane layer of reality, right? That's the layer of reality that just deals with making food, doing laundry, attending to the basic physical necessities of life, making money, spending money, caring for things, tending after things, tending after our physical bodies, all of that. And then there is the larger emotional reality of our journey, which can include in part a connection to our soul's reality, right? Evolution happens through the emotional body, but why is that? Was because the emotional body is the out picturing of the moon, of the ego, of our identification. And the inner reality ultimately is that of the soul, the nature of the soul, which gets incarnated in this physical reality. And so while we're navigating, we're both soul and we're spirit and we're a body and we have an identity, we have a name, we have an address, we have things that we call ourselves, roles and responsibilities, things that we do. The emotional body becomes the extension of where those things are emanating from an identification with our core wound, our core desires, our core, at the most fundamental level, our core soul's purpose, or what I would call our mission in the world, right? The mission of not only what we do, because you aren't just what you are who you are. And that larger who you are is woven into the fabric of life in such a complex, perfect tapestry, but we're often just pulling at little threads of ourselves and feeling, in some sense, pulled apart by the way that reality can be in conflict to those deeper desires of our soul. And when I see the, retrograde period, this evolutionary acceleration towards resolving the dynamics where that mundane reality, our mundane life, the doing laundry self, the tending, work and family and physical health self, and that identity that gets really fixed and really struggles with letting go of those postures, even if there are things that are uncomfortable for us, In our home, we've been really struggling with sleep and sleeping and, is it this bed or is it that bed? Do we change this room or is it that room? Is it this thing or is it that thing? Right? There's any number of causes. And then underneath the like logistical um physical reality, right? There is the deeper emotional reality, the deeper soul level meaning that we assign to our experience. And yet we have to both evolve through that emotional body, through that extension of our experience that's a part of our mundane daily physical life. This is why we follow the moon, and the most basic reason from the most basic perspective, and how the moon reflects that changing emotional experience. And at the same time, we have that outer experience, or that moon emotional experience, linked to our deeper soul's calling, right? And their connection or separation, the calling, the distance, I would say, between our calling and where we are is the tension that we feel. The distance also is also the tension that we feel in our evolutionary journey relative to where we are at in how we are relating to the calling of our heart or the calling of our soul and our physical life, and how that might not at all look the way that we desire it to look, right? Especially when we're including the larger global scope of humanity, and our even if we are a small, pool in the 7 billion souls on this planet, right? Even if we are a micro fraction of the infinite, of the divine, we are still a part of that. And it is still a part of us. Just like the chart of the present moment reflects the entirety and the singular perspective of a unique soul, or the singular perspective of one moment in time. And I'm reflecting you from the present moment. So it's Monday, and we've got the moon in Taurus conjunct Hygeia. And for me, I was thinking about how oftentimes when we're struggling physically, whether it's our nervous system, whether it's trauma, whether it's a long-term sickness, whether it's struggling in our finances, wherever our resources, our Taurus resources, are sort of out of alignment with our um, emotional needs, right? We can very often be living at a deficit. There's very few people that I know of. I haven't met a whole lot of folks who are like thriving in the real. And I want to see people who are thriving in the real. It's not just a social media reel that's cultivated and curated for you to believe something. I want to see the married couple with 8 kids who are thriving in the real, growing their own food and tending to their nervous systems and living in peace and harmony with their neighbors and having a direct relationship to God. Those are the folks I want to know. I want to see, where are they? They have an emotionally healthy relationship. They have great intimacy. They have a family that they're growing. They are living healthy, free, connected to one another. It's interesting because for me, I received a dream the other day, and in the dream message, I was writing on a whiteboard the formula for transforming a relationship. Transformation was equal to emotional self-responsibility plus intimacy and connection. So think of that like an algebraic equation, right? If we're missing emotional self-responsibility, we will be in a sense blaming others, or feel like we're the sacrificial lamb of the relationship, or in a basically an unhealthy codependent pattern where our emotions are tied to the other person's actions, or the other person's emotions, or the other person's needs, to the deficit of our own physical emotional well-being. So emotionally healthy plus intimacy. And what is intimacy really? Into me you see. It's transparency. It's being honest with one another. It's revealing ourselves. It's sharing who we are and what we are at the deepest level, and being loved and seen for that and as that and in that without exception, right? Which is a pretty high ideal to hold when most of our culture curates the way that people see us, or we are living in perceptions of others, but not the reality of another. People can live together in a life and have completely dual lives, be completely dishonest with one another, but it looks good on paper, looks good, not true, not real, not intimacy, right? Intimacy. And then connection. And connection is more than just like, I'm physically touching you, I'm holding you. We feel it's a feeling of and belonging, being and belonging united with one another. And that allows us to be with another. And even if they are different, even if they hold a different perspective than us, we can be connected and share even opposing views. We can be connected and be united in our journey together, but be in different places. We can be connected, and whether we're physically touching or we're emotionally, I think what most of us want on a deeper level is emotional connection. And emotional connection is actually generated from an internal feeling of being connected to another, which I think the reason why it's like intimacy and connection, because that happens together. By seeing another, we end up feeling and understanding the experience of another. We get to be with ourselves in that, and we feel a part of. And it also weaves in the necessity of vulnerability. And vulnerability also follows us, of course, in those deepest places, happens to be carrying those deepest wounds where we get angered, where we get triggered, where we become reactive. One of the things I saw this week for myself was like, oh, okay, I get triggered and reactive when I have an emotional response to something, and there's not a safe or a healthy space for me to share that, for me to give voice to that, or it's shut down. The person I'm with is not available for those feelings, and I'm left with something that I can't do anything with. It's like being left with a huge basket of stuff, but you're not allowed to put it down. You're not allowed to spill it. You can't go anywhere with it. And there's a subtle form of exhaustion, anger, rage, whatever, however, suffering. For me, there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of suffering that comes with that feeling, and a powerlessness. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to be with it. And I started the other day to leave my home thinking like, oh, this is the only way to move with this energy. But then I realized like, no, I actually have a space. I can actually create a space for myself to be with this, even if it cannot be resolved. And I realized relative to this Venus retrograde, and this I think will become especially more important as Mercury also turns retrograde. The retrograde function is an internalization of that energy. We are going to have to really figure out how to do with what we feel, how to feel what we feel and do with it what we need to do without hurting or harming ourselves or others. The propensity we might have towards reactivity, right? It'll be about 2 weeks from now when both, maybe not even 2 weeks, about maybe 10 days, when both Mercury and Venus will be retrograde together. So, we're in the first part of it. We're in the Venus retrograde and the Mercury shadow. And you may have already noticed things coming up for you. You know, you may have already noticed past patterns, things that are just like unavoidable to deal with. I think I mentioned on the previous video that I took my car in to be serviced and had them and do a full service and inspection, knowing that this Mercury and Venus retrograde was coming up. And then just as Venus is stationing retrograde, I hear my brakes squealing so loud. It was like kind of like that nails on a chalkboard sound everywhere I was driving. And I was like, this isn't safe. What happened? Because I had my car serviced and I specifically asked them to inspect the brakes, and they said everything was fine. And so I immediately took the car into the closest mechanic, right next to where I was and said, "Can you take a look at these brakes? Because I can hear them so loud, like metal on metal." And they said, "Oh, yeah, the back brakes are totally worn. You need new brakes," right? That's a revealing, right? I even tried to get ahead of the thing and it's still caught up with me. But right now the car is being worked on and I'm waiting for it to, waiting for the call that everything's been resolved. And it's Venus related to Taurus, gonna cost extra money. And in some ways it's unexpected. In other ways, I had that intuitive feeling that I knew that the brakes were not, you know, but I trusted that the person before at the dealership who said that they did a full inspection of the brakes and that they were adequate, that they were in good shape, that that was true, right? And a lot of what we can experience during retrogrades and eclipses is things coming back up or being revealed that we didn't know before, that now we know, now we have to do something about what we know. And if this is upsetting or distressing, right, you can think of it as a Mercury or a Venus retrograde intervention. If you've been stuck in a relational pattern that hasn't been able to resolve, and that relational pattern comes up again, what do you get? You either can see it as I'm getting triggered and this is really hard, and you can resist it and you can be going about the same way that you tried to get it resolved, which I tried to do this week, and I tell you, it just doesn't work. Um, or you can recognize that that is a call for evolutionary resolution and that it is going to require you to do something different. And with the North Node in Pisces, oh, this is going to make me cry. With Saturn and Neptune, on some level, it's calling us towards a soul level surrender, saying, hey, I can't do this anymore. Hey, this doesn't work. Hey, please help. I need a different way. I need to find another answer. I need to have enough strength and courage and capacity to face the deeper emotional reality that comes along with this thing in my life that is out of alignment with the true and the core desires of my soul. So, as we do that, of course, whenever there's a call for surrender, it means letting go of our plan, letting go of our agenda, meeting the discomfort of whatever is arising. Not because we like to suffer. I'm not here to be your friend in suffering. I want us all to get free, I want to see more and more people living on this world happy and healthy and thriving, knowing themselves as the love that they are and living as that. And I want that for myself as much as I want that for you. So when we face these patterns, which will emerge, we could say the triggers will emerge, but there's this deeper internalized access to a point of evolution that is calling us to greater compassion, greater empathy, deeper surrender, deeper faith, deeper trust. In the mystery, why is this happening? In the meaning, this is what the initiation is all about right now. And of course, as we face this, it will require us to feel and be embodied in a particular way that may be unfamiliar. In the same way that if you've been familiar with crisis or dysfunction or disease, right? Being well isn't going to be familiar. Being healthy isn't going to be familiar, right? Doesn't matter how long it's been. I know people who suffering from Lyme disease for 20 or 30 years, people who um, have had resentments in relationships for 20 or 30 years, people who have been alone, and not in a partnership for 20 or 30 years or 40 years, and have kind of decided inside themselves, I'm familiar with this condition, so how could I expect it to change? I wouldn't be able to handle the good feeling that would come from even what my deepest soul desire is. I'm familiar with, you know, the state of mind. I'm familiar with the train of thought. I'm familiar with all the conditions. I'm familiar with the belief system. So, how would it be possible for me to change or challenge that belief system without inserting something new, right? Without inserting a new idea, a new perspective, a new calling, right? A new emotional reality, ultimately, right? As we move along through this week, we're going to see the moon square. Sorry, when it's in here in Gemini, it's going to square, make the first quarter square to the sun in Pisces, right? So these are immutable signs. And we have Saturn and the sun, which are all ruled by this Neptune at 29 degrees. There's a very, very strong culmination energy of that Neptune. It's pushing, it's like the full crest of the wave sitting right before it's about to collapse into Aries, right? We're just at the edge of that. And then we have Jupiter, who's moving now direct, but still in its shadow from its retrograde. And the first quarter square is described as a crisis of action, where you have to get into doing things different. And however many times we have done the same thing over and over again, there's always that quote you hear: insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I don't know if you heard that, but I heard it a lot in like the recovery community, because we can be in our addictions, we can be um, in our patterns, whatever it is, again and again, and expect that from that place it's going to change, and it's never going to change from that place. And that's the crisis. Then how do I do something different? How do I think differently about this? Change my mind. Help me to see this differently. Give me the wisdom to see, oh, I've been doing this, it just doesn't work. What's next? What's a different way? Maybe it's giving into the thing that we actually don't want to happen on an emotional level. And that's the letting go. And it might mean any number of things, but not allowing our mind to decide what it's going to be. Not letting the evidence of what happens and what actually is, as opposed to what our minds think is going to happen. Because often, the mind can catastrophize anything. It can create the mental pattern that brings up the catastrophe can create the very same feeling in the body without the catastrophe actually happening. So we can feel worried, afraid, angry. We can feel angry at a thing that is not a real thing just because of thinking that the thing is going to happen. Have you ever had that happen where it's like somebody, you're going to have an interaction with someone, and so you start thinking about what you're going to say to them and what they're going to say to you, and if you think they're going to say something mean to you, so that you start preparing for that mean thing that they're going to say. But what is really required of you is for you to walk in there and say the most vulnerable thing that you could possibly say. I did a sales training at one time in my life when I used to be a financial advisor. And one of the things they said is, go in naming the thing that you're afraid of right from the get-go. That will build trust. And it'll be like, oh, I'm afraid you're going to think that this is too expensive. And so you won't even hear me out as to why it's valuable for your life and blah, blah, blah. Right. And then they'll say, no, 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 I'm sure. I'm happy to hear you out. Tell me about what you have. And then you say, oh, okay, yeah, well, it's this thing and it's just going to change your life because if you invest in it and you do it, blah, blah, blah. Right. But you lead it with the thing that you're afraid that they're going to. And so you go into the conflict with your colleague who you're afraid is going to be mad with at you because you're not going to be able to do the thing that they need you to do. And you say, I'm really afraid that you're going to be disappointed in me because I'm not going to be able to do this thing that you need me to do because there's just not enough time in our work schedule. And they say, oh, no, 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 it's so important for you to do this. Why don't we hire someone to help you do it? Or, oh, no, 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 why don't I don't need you to do all of that. You could just do this little part. This is the most important piece. You never know. I mean, the truth is, like, you never know what power your vulnerability will have in bringing intimacy and connection to that relationship. And of course, as you do it, as you make that extension, it may prove to be incredibly powerful, right? It may soften the person's heart, or it may change the circumstances, or it may reveal a deeper truth, or it may reveal a necessary path. And yet we have to have the emotional emotionally emotional self responsibility, right? We have to be able to hold ourselves. That's that part of that formula that's so important. And as Mars is in Cancer, resolving this, right? That is a part of what we're cultivating. That emotional self responsibility becomes the inner authority that we're able to listen to, as opposed to people pleasing to what other people want, or sacrificing to what other people want, and losing tether to the very nature of what we know inside, right? Our knowing, or what we're praying for, or what we're holding to, right? This is the capacity of faith that I think is so important, this emotional self responsibility. And as we move through this week into the Cancer moon time will include a square to Chiron and a square to Venus, and it will trine Saturn and the Sun, right? This could be a really emotional weekend in terms of Saturday, in particular, Sunday, leading us, leading us to the moon opposite Pluto, which every time the moon goes through the Pluto polarity point, I think it's pay attention for your own experience. You tell me what happens for you too. Let me know. Um, One of the most important things I could teach you to do would be, as you're learning astrology, to reference your present moment experience to the chart. That's been the number one way that I have learned about what these archetypes are truly reflecting, through direct experience. And I have an app on my phone. I use Time Passages or Solar Fire's Astro Gold app on my phone. And I'll check the present moment, especially when something intense or something really strong or something really difficult or something really clear is happening. I'll check the present moment to see, what is this? What is this? What is this here? It's no different than like looking at the natal chart and seeing the soul in front of me, along with the present moment transits, to see, what is this here that we're working with? What are we dealing with from our own perspective? And as we get to that Pluto polarity moment, the moon opposite Pluto, so 3 degrees or so of Leo, right? That is activating that core Pluto intention of creative self-actualization. Our special purpose in the world, your special purpose in the world, the meaning of your life is that you are a creative being. You were created by your creator, which is love. You were created to create with that love that is you, and that love that is you wants to be in the world, belongs in the world, right? These are the things that we've forgotten, that we separate from, and we mistake our identity to be who people tell us to be, what people think us to be, what we think of ourselves, which is often conditioned, learned guilt, learned, uh, you know, identities from others, from our family, our society, our culture, etc. So every time we get that point activated, there's a, hey, what are we doing here to create? Hey, just reminding you, you know, if you are having trouble, if you feel angry, if you feel afraid, if you feel frustrated, if you feel emotional, if you feel, any of the things, feeling all the feels, if you feel stuck, if you feel alone, if you feel stifled, if you feel confused, if you feel lost, great, you're in the right place. I know it doesn't feel like that. I know it doesn't feel like the right thing to be going through, but here you are. Hineni, this is my favorite word in Hebrew. It means here I am. And sometimes I'll say that to God, just be like, Hineni, here I am. Here I am. Doing the best that I can with who I am and where I am and what I am. Now help me, please, to see what it is that you want me to see, to do what it is that you want me to do, to heal, to transform the patterns that have kept us stuck, right? This requires us to give ourselves over to something that would have the answer, the solution. And we can try and find that in the world. It's like I constantly get these YouTube ads on lately when I'm watching things on YouTube that are like, hey, if you want to lose weight, I have this secret, and it's this mix of apple cider vinegar and something else. But if you just keep listening to me, and it's like, no, you're not going to find the answer there. That is not the secret to your weight loss. I'll tell you what the secret to your weight loss is. It is feeling that childhood abandonment and betrayal. It is feeling all the pain from the ways in which you were touched or not touched in the ways that you needed to be. And it is holding that part of yourself and saying, I love you. I'm here. What do we really want? Do we really want the sugar, or do we want to feel love? Because the sugar is a temporary solution to the missing of the feeling of love. And then, then you got to make your own choice. You got to make the choice of what you want more. What do you want more? Because one thing is a quick answer to resolve a feeling of discomfort. And it's easy, it's accessible. The whole world will support you in doing it and then tell you that there's a really quick way out of it by just drinking apple cider vinegar and lemon juice and ginger or whatever it is, right? I don't know what it is, but I'm just telling you. I don't have the secret. But I can tell you this, that wherever we go, there we are. So that thing, if we don't resolve the underlying thing, will never feel different. And that is the deeper requirement if we want to resolve things. We might not want to resolve it that bad, in which case we might just keep choosing the sugar because it's easier. It's more accessible. We might keep choosing the drug. We might keep choosing the relationship pattern. We might keep choosing the wrong relationship. We might keep doing the same thing that keeps us in financial insecurity, but then wondering, why am I financially insecure? It's like, because you got to change that, because that has to change, because it can't sustain itself that way. And yet it cannot change without you, right? And that is, I think, the I, me, mine of this whole retrograde is really that I am the only one who can change me. And if I can't change me, God is the only one who can change me. I cannot change anyone else. I may not be able to change certain things that are outside of my control, that are outside of my domain, but I am the only one who can change what I see that is within me. And in this way, the internalization will help us to get to something so much deeper, help us to resolve something so much more powerful than just the secret fix that the world wants you to believe in, right? This we want real lasting change. We want deep healing love. We want unconditional partnership. We want marriage based on divinity. We want children that are healed and healthy. We want lives that are thriving. And we won't get there by just scraping the surface and rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, you know? All right, my friends. That is our message for today. I hope that these messages help you. I hope this week ahead is a really beautiful experience for you as you witness yourself going through what you're going through. Please share your heart with me or leave me a little emoji, something that lets me know that this matters to you, that you matter, I matter, we matter, and together that we're on this journey. I appreciate you and love you so much. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. I love you and take a great day. Great care with yourself, as always, my friends. Bye for now.